Hello YouTube, N64 here, I'm back. Thanks for tuning in again as always, it's very much appreciated. We are back with another episode of Mission N64 239. So to anyone that's new, we're aiming to complete and review all 239 UK PAL N64 games. We're up to episode 14 now, so for anyone that's interested, I'll put a link in the description to the playlist. We've completed and beaten 13 games so far on this journey already, and yeah, up to episode 14 now, and we're going for Chameleon Twist. It's not a game that I've ever really come across before. I don't remember it at all growing up. I don't remember seeing it around. It's not a game that I've ever played before. I have no idea what I'm in for really. I have had a quick look at gameplay, so tell a lie, I do know what I'm in for a little bit, but no, it looks quite interesting. It's a little platforming game. The N64 library is littered with yeah, sports games, but also platforming type games as well. Some great, some not so great. But yeah, let's have a look at this one then and see what it's all about. I can't really give much more commentary on it at this stage because I am having a complete stab in the dark really. Like I said before, this is a journey of adventure and discovery, and I'm really looking forward to getting my teeth into this one and seeing what it's all about. Just before we get into it, we'll have a look at the magazine and see how it rated and see what we're in for then. So, official N64 magazine. Where are we? Chameleon Twist. 70%. Thrills and spills, but it won't take you long to finish. The multiplayer game is okay, mind. So that might give you a clue about why I've chosen it then. It's meant to be quite a short game, and you know, I've been quite busy lately. I've had a lot on and I wanted to get another episode out there, but I didn't want to spend like hours and hours and hours trying to get a game done. Obviously I've plugged a fair bit of time into Saw recently, and so I wanted a game on Mission N64 239 that I could beat pretty quickly. So there's your clue, it's meant to be a pretty short game. Just to quickly add, it did spawn a sequel, Chameleon Twist 2. It's actually quite an uncommon game, quite a difficult one to come by, at least until my mate in Australia came across a brand new shipper full of sealed copies, and he found a shed load of them in the land down under. It's just mad, isn't it? The games can be seemingly rare, and then even quarter of a century later, the shipping boxes of brand new copies being uncovered, and it's the same with some other games as well. There's been another batch of games that aren't as rare as Chameleon Twist 2, but they're certainly hard to get in good condition, and then a couple of shipping boxes of brand new copies have been found again. It's absolutely mad, isn't it? But yes, without further ado then, let's get into it. Chameleon Twist. Right then guys, let's go. Chameleon Twist is a 3D platform game developed by Japan System Supply and published by Sunsoft outside of Japan. It released in December of 1997. You take the role of one of 4 anthropomorphic chameleons and travel across 6 themed worlds in a magical kingdom, having followed a white rabbit, where have I heard this before, into a magic cauldron. In this magical world you can walk on 2 legs and make use of the chameleon's elongated tongue as a weapon to attack enemies either by hit or to lick and grab and subsequently swallow or spit them back out on the counter-attack. The tongue can also be used as a means of traversing gaps by licking a pole, grabbing and pulling method, or by lick, grab and swinging around in a 360-degree motion. The tongue can also be used to help pole vault higher into a vertical motion and get up onto higher ledges, a quite useful asset, that tongue. I'll just highlight at this stage that you can save your progress to the cart, which gets a big thumbs up from me. You know by now my dissatisfaction with the memory pack saving on the Nintendo 64 and all the problems I had as a child with one of those. Before you embark on your journey, there is the option to enter a 5-room training area to practice the controls and different types of acrobatics that you need to do to traverse through the levels, the bulk of which I skipped, but I would strongly recommend doing because I ended up having to look at some of the controls in the manual. Each world has varying environments to work through, the objective being to search for crowns, which are effectively the same as stars on Super Mario 64, and to essentially traverse through these worlds in true platforming style using the skill or movesets available to you. There are typically like red badges at the top of the screen which indicate how many hits or essentially lives that you've got, and you can find hearts dotted around the levels, either a red one which gives you 1 extra sort of hit or life, and an orange one I believe which is 2. If you lose all of your lives you do get a game over screen, but you are effectively able to continue, but you are penalised essentially for that later on. When you complete the world you get a summary screen, and on that it tells you how many attempts it took you in terms of continues. Here I am just picking up a crown and enjoying some of the simple but effective gameplay, just traversing my way through the level and enjoying this platform game for what it is. As you work through the worlds there's certain puzzles to solve, how to get through from A to B in a certain way using the skills available to you, but then each world eventually culminates in a boss battle, which helps bring a sense of achievement to completing them, and an enjoyable way to wrap up each world really. One of the game's biggest criticisms was the camera. Whilst there is a degree of flexibility with moving this using the C buttons, it is a lot more rigid than the full flexibility offered by Super Mario 64, and it is playing this game that you truly appreciate how good the mechanics on that game are. Meanwhile, the control systems on this game are pretty good. The moves are fairly simple. It's not too difficult to execute those moves with the right amount of practice. The biggest problem is getting the camera to sit in a position that suits you. And here we are at the first boss at the end of the first world. This one's a particularly easy one to beat, as were a few others, and some were not so easy. It was kind of sporadic which ones were tough and which ones were easy, but all in all they are fairly intuitive. It's not too difficult to work out how to beat any of them, and as I mentioned before, there is a sense of achievement for beating those bosses, even if a little anticlimactic in some cases. Upon completion of the world, there is a summary of how long it took, how many attempts in terms of continues. You can also see how many crowns were obtained out of the total possible to find, adding some replayability there to the true perfectionists out there, but I'm not convinced how much longevity this really adds. And when you go back to revisit a world on the summary screen at the main menu, you can see how many crowns you have and how many are outstanding there as well. Visually, the game looks alright, however some of the textures are quite bland, but the worlds do appear to get brighter, more colourful and imaginative as they go on. I guess it is a relatively early release on the system in 1997, so some concessions can be made there. The game was also criticised for being quite short, and whilst it certainly was not as short as I initially expected, there was more due to my lack of experience, and I can only imagine I could at least half the time it took me to complete this game with the knowledge that I now have. In terms of how long it took me, we'll go into that towards the end of the video. The game was also criticised for its music, which I actually thought was enjoyable and upbeat, albeit a little repetitive, but I think it added a nice little bit of charm to the game. It added to the backdrop. I think it's World 4 as well, particularly. I enjoyed the music in the background to that. It really made you feel like you're out in the desert. And just like that, we're at the boss of World 2. You can see it's a queen ant, hence a little crown on her head there, nice and cute. And yeah, you just have to essentially use your tongue, swing round in a 360 motion to trip her up at the opportune moment, taking care of not to get hit by the ants that are on the ground around you, and then swallowing up some of the ants, one or more, and firing them back at her while she's on her back, not while she's stood up, and do that 4 or 5 times, and that is the boss completed. Not the most difficult, but it was one of the more challenging out the lot I found, and a sense of reward, like I said before, once you've beaten the boss. And we're on to World 3 now. What I did find interesting was that you didn't have to do every single world in chronological order, so once you've beaten the first world, you could either go on to World 2 or 3, and I guess if you're struggling with one or the other, you can just skip to the other world and sort of try and beat that one first. I didn't overly struggle with any of the worlds. I knew that I had to complete them all, so I did them all chronologically anyway, but I thought it was a nice touch that should you be in a position where you're struggling, you have the option of worlds that you can go to. I suppose this is a similar feature to platforming games of the time. I'll keep referring to Super Mario 64. It was the #1 seller on the system, the #1 selling platformer on the system. It's had paintings which we all know and love, and you didn't necessarily have to go into each painting as and when you come across them and complete them in a certain order. And so, having beaten the 3rd world boss, this takes us on to the 4th world, Desert Castle, and this is probably my favourite world out of the 6. It was the most enjoyable for me personally. I enjoyed the backdrop, I thought the visuals were good, the music was good like I touched on before, and this was the world where they really stepped it up. You know, you took the leap into really having to come into your own, having to think about how to pivot yourself and get up onto hard to reach areas. It wasn't as obvious what you need to do. It was a little trial and error. You would die a few times trying to work something out, and it wasn't as straightforward as previous worlds were. And so in light of all of that, there was a greater sense of accomplishment as and when you sort of progress to the further depths of the world, and obviously going on to finally complete it. As I mentioned previously, the boss of this world was a little anticlimactic. For all the hard work we did in getting towards the boss, you would expect a bit of a more difficult showdown to wrap the world up. However, it was immensely enjoyable to get to that stage, and for that I am grateful of the experience and, well, the level designers, I guess. Interestingly enough, there is a multiplayer battle mode for up to 4 players, which I imagine does add a small bonus dimension to the game, but I'm not sure how far this goes to competing with the likes of Mario Kart, GoldenEye, these sort of multiplayer games that were out at the same time this game was. I'm not sure how much people would be like, yes, let's have a multiplayer game on Chameleon Twist, when you've got the likes of those games lying around as well. I'm sure there is some fun to be had on the multiplayer of Chameleon Twist. I'm just not convinced how much fun can be had versus the so many other great multiplayer games on the Nintendo 64. And I have no memories of anybody ever saying to me, oh, we really need to play the multiplayer on Chameleon Twist, either back in the day or in modern times. Have you ever played the multiplayer on this game? So that kind of tells a story in itself if there's nobody out there telling me you really need to try the multiplayer on this. But I should perhaps not be so dismissive, so I will look into some of the gameplay out of interest for sure. Indeed, if you have any comments on this game at all, but particularly on the multiplayer, then please light up the comments section and let me know of your memories, your experiences with this game, and how you felt about it, the pros and cons of it, and all that good stuff. And here we are at the boss of the 4th world. As previously, it is slightly anticlimactic, and by that I mean it's not terribly difficult to work out what you need to do. And some will say that's a good thing. They don't want to spend all day trying to work out how to defeat a boss. They don't want to be tearing their hair out, frustrated with a game. They just want to play it to enjoy it. And I get that to some extent. This seems to be sort of the polar opposite. It's too easy, really. Not all the bosses were like this, like I said, but this one, what was meant to be an enjoyable and challenging world, you expect a little bit more of a challenge to cap it all off, but it really wasn't that difficult. With that being said, perhaps I'm just being a bit harsh, and I found it easy because my skill level at the game had gone up. And so with World 4 truly in our rear view, that took us on to World 5, and this is perhaps the one that took me the longest. It's certainly the one that I lost the most lives on, and it was probably the most painfully frustrating world out of the lot for me. It's the one where I kept dying needlessly, perhaps because I was rushing, I was just eager to get things done. I was probably trying to get across gaps too impatiently, and what I learned was if I just slowed down a little bit, didn't try and rush, just try to be more patient, that was the key to success on this world. The old adage, more haste, less speed, has never been truer, as I found out as I tried to traverse through this world. And this part that you're watching at the moment was the beginning of what probably took me at least half an hour to get to the stage that you're looking at now, but also to get across all of this. And it might seemingly look quite easy. This was the successful attempt that I'm showing you. We don't have time for me to show you all the failed attempts, of course, but yes, it proved quite difficult. And one of the main problems or reasons for that was not being able to spin the camera the way I'd prefer to view things. With that being said, once you learn the mechanics, it's not strictly essential. You don't have to be able to spin the camera a full 360 degrees, but I don't know, sometimes you feel like you want to, and just not being able to becomes an annoyance more than anything else. But here we are, we made it, we successfully traversed our way through the obstacles and went through all the hurdles in World 5 and made it to the boss. And This is what I'm talking about, being slightly anticlimactic. Okay, we've got a spinning, rotating cake, which rains strawberries on us from time to time. But quite simply, all you need to do, avoid being hit, of course, but once it opens up, there are 4 of these enemies in there, which you need to just jump, suck, or lick and suck out, and spit out. And once you've done that to all 4 of the enemies pushing the cake around, quite simply, you have defeated it. I believe what was ultimately a surprise was that the boss difficulty was firstly disproportionate to the difficulty of the actual world to get to the boss itself, so anticlimactic, but secondly also disproportionate to the difficulty of, say, the second world boss, so that Queen Ant, to me, was a lot more difficult to defeat than the 5th world boss. So it just doesn't make sense to me that you'd expect the difficulty of the bosses to get harder as the levels or worlds progress, which is not what I found. In some cases it got easier, particularly for World 5, and therefore it just seems that their difficulties are a little bit muddled up. Nevertheless, here we are on World 6, and this was an interesting bit of gameplay. You're on a pool table and you have to pot all the balls using the cue ball and hitting that with your tongue, and some of the challenges on this world got a lot more difficult. I'm making this look extremely easily. Believe me, it's not. With those rotating barrels, you have microseconds before you need to jump, otherwise you end up rolling off and getting into trouble. Similarly here, using your tongue to pole vault your way up, it's not as easy as it looks, and once you fall down you have to go all the way back around, and got painfully frustrating at times, but very enjoyable and rewarding once executed to perfection. I found this next part of the world fun, imaginative, enjoyable, not too difficult, but it definitely encourages you to think fast, act fast. You have to lick these fireballs, aim them at the candles, shoot them at the candles, light the candles, and that will create a slab for you to jump on. They do not stay there for an incredibly long period of time, so you need to be quick and you have to work your way around. Should you fall off, you have to start again from the beginning, so it's not very forgiving. I didn't find it terribly difficult, but I did find it enjoyable, and it just added another dynamic to this platforming game that I've enjoyed. And just like that, we made it to the final boss of World 6, the final boss to beat the game. This one was a little bit more challenging and therefore made it a bit more exciting. Those coloured balls on each sort of arm, you have to lick each one of them to attack them, and that's the first phase of the boss complete. It's not as easy as it looks to avoid getting hit, and then the second phase, as you'll see, is just firing the balls that it spits out back at it. As I aforementioned, it did spawn a sequel, Chameleon Twist 2, and despite the repetitive music, awkward camera angles, I find myself wondering what this game is like, so perhaps I should consider bringing this to the channel in the not too distant future. I'm certainly excited by the prospect of it. This game for me, overall, was short, sharp, and an enjoyable platformer, but it lacks somewhat in depth and replayability, and I can only imagine the disappointment to somebody who bought this game brand new. The bang for your buck being far less than the competitors at the time, Super Mario 64 for example. It is one that would be more ideal for a rental only, for the weekend perhaps, and then to return. There is not an awful lot from what I can see that keeps you coming back, but I'm very delighted that I've had the enjoyment of playing this game, completing this game, being able to bring it to the channel, and now it's one that I can say I've played and have a lot more to say about the game than I had previously. And that's what's important about this journey. It's a journey of discovery. It's learning so much about these games that I never even knew about. And there are pockets of excitement, enjoyment, and thrills to be had. Upon defeating the final boss, you are then led to the final credits with this really joyful and pleasant music, and there is no way to skip the credits, so you are actually required to enjoy the whole experience and watch your way through. You then encounter the rabbit one more time, who asks you if you enjoyed your adventure, to which the camera nods on your behalf, and then you see the chameleon shiftily walking off, and you're then greeted with a final summary. As you can see, my total playing time was 3.5 hours. I think I can certainly get that down in the future. So that is it, guys. Chameleon Twist is now complete. Delighted to have ticked off another N64 game that I've completed. That's our 14th this year now as part of Mission N64 239. And yeah, good fun little platforming game. It is quite short. It was longer than I was expecting though, so I was expecting like an hour and a half from what I'd read online. It actually took me the best part of 3.5 hours, all in all, sort of playing time. But yeah, I'm a bit of a novice at this game. Obviously, I've not played it before. I didn't invest in playing the training. I just wanted to get on with it, and obviously I paid for it later in the game when I had to sort of learn these sort of tricky moves. They're not overly complicated, but just under pressure and trying to get it done, I did die more than my fair share and probably could have done it a little bit quicker. Like I said, I'm not sure how much replayability is there with this game. I guess there's those crowns, what you'd call stars on Super Mario 64, to collect, so you can go back and try and collect all of them. There is a multiplayer function, which I've got no idea what it's like, because I haven't played it, but that would have been there back in the day as sort of something to do. But in the main, it is a quick game, probably one that you could have completed in a weekend if you rented it from Blockbuster or whatever. One sort of drawback with the game is the camera is not very good. It makes you appreciate how good the camera on Super Mario 64 is, where you can full on rotate 360 degrees and get a better field of view for whatever sort of puzzle or jump you're trying to achieve, where it's a lot more difficult on this. And I found it quite a hindrance at times for me to sort of get the angle that I wanted to help me sort of get through the level or part of the level. But overall, enjoyed this game. I think the 7 out of 10 in the magazine's about fair. I don't think it's worth any more than that. It'll take the shine off the better platforming games on the system. But yeah, there's a good little fun game there, albeit it is a little bit short. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you like this video, please whack a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. Drop a comment, let me know what you think about this game, whether you played it back in the day, whether you heard about it back in the day. Drop a comment and let me know. If you're new to the channel or a returning viewer and you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps me out. We want more of you coming along for this journey. Can I complete and review all 239 UK PAL N64 games? I've obviously got the side quest going on as well, collecting the PS3 essentials and PS4 hits, and you can come along with me on the journey for that. And yeah, hopefully it won't be too soon before we get on to episode 15 of Mission N64 239. I'm not sure what game that'll be yet, but stay tuned to the channel to find out what game that's going to be. Thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you on the next one. Like I've said before, this is an adventure of discovery, and like I've said before, this is a